The moving truck pulled away from the curb on a sunny Saturday morning in April, leaving the Johnson family standing in front of their new two-story brick home. Marcus Johnson, a tall man with kind eyes, put his arm around his wife Tanya's shoulders. "We made it," he said, looking at their beautiful house with its fresh blue shutters and well-kept lawn. Tanya smiled and squeezed his hand. Her braids were tied back neatly, and despite the long day of moving, she still looked energetic. As a high school science teacher, she was used to busy days. "Kids, come help with these boxes," she called to their children. 14-year-old Zoe came bouncing down the driveway. Her colorful beaded braids swung as she moved. She grabbed a box marked kitchen and headed inside. 10-year-old Tyler followed, carefully carrying his box of video games and books. "I think we're going to be happy here," Marcus said. He had worked hard as an IT specialist to save enough money for this house in Oak Ridge, one of the best neighborhoods in the city. The schools were good, the streets were safe, and the houses were beautiful. As they carried boxes inside, a woman with gray hair crossed the street holding a plate of cookies. "Welcome to the neighborhood," she said warmly. "I'm Barbara from across the street. I thought you might like some homemade chocolate chip cookies." "That's so kind," Tanya said, accepting the plate. "I'm Tanya Johnson, and this is my husband Marcus." Soon, other neighbors came by. The Martinez family from next door brought a houseplant. An older couple, the Wilsons, offered to show them where the best grocery stores were. By afternoon, the Johnsons had met almost everyone on their street. Almost everyone. From his window across the street and 2 houses down, Richard Caldwell watched the Johnsons with narrow eyes. He was a thin man in his 50s with thinning hair and a permanent frown. Richard pulled his curtains shut when he saw the Johnsons looking his way. "That's strange," Marcus said to Tanya later that evening as they unpacked kitchen items. "Everyone's been so friendly except for that one neighbor." "Which one?" Tanya asked, placing plates in a cabinet. "The guy in the gray house with the red door. I waved at him earlier, but he just closed his curtains." Tanya shrugged. "Maybe he's just shy, or having a bad day." The next morning, the Johnsons decided to explore their new neighborhood. They walked past Richard's house, where he was watering his perfectly trimmed lawn. Marcus raised his hand in greeting. "Good morning, neighbor. I'm Marcus Johnson. We just moved in down the street." Richard looked up, his face hard. He turned away without speaking and went inside his house, slamming the door behind him. "Well, that was rude," Zoe said, frowning. "Let's not judge too quickly," Marcus told his daughter. "Maybe he's dealing with something difficult." But on Monday, as Marcus left for work, he noticed Richard watching him from behind his curtains. When their eyes met, Richard's expression was cold and angry. Throughout their first week, the Johnsons settled into a routine. Tyler made friends with a boy down the street. Zoe spent time arranging her room just the way she liked it. Tanya prepared for her new teaching job at the local high school, and Marcus set up his home office for days when he could work remotely. They felt welcomed by everyone, except Richard, who now openly glared at them whenever they passed. When Tyler's ball accidentally rolled onto Richard's lawn, Richard picked it up and threw it in his trash can instead of returning it. "Something's not right with that man," Tanya said to Marcus that night. "The way he looks at us, it makes me uncomfortable." Marcus nodded slowly. "I feel it too, but we can't let one unfriendly neighbor ruin our new home. This is our dream house, remember?" Neither of them could have guessed just how unfriendly Richard would become, or how soon they would discover the hatred behind his cold stares. 3 weeks passed since the Johnsons moved in. Their house now felt like home, with family photos on the walls and Tanya's collection of plants brightening the windows. But the problem with Richard Caldwell was getting worse, not better. One Saturday afternoon, Tyler and his new friend Kevin were playing catch in the Johnsons' backyard. Their laughter filled the air as they tossed the football back and forth. Suddenly, a police car pulled up in front of the house. Marcus was washing his car in the driveway when an officer approached him. "Good afternoon, sir. We received a noise complaint about this address," the officer said. Marcus looked confused. "A noise complaint? The boys are just playing in the backyard." The officer nodded. "I can see that, and honestly, they're not being very loud. But we have to follow up on all calls." After the officer left, Marcus noticed Richard watching from his window with a small smile on his face. The next day, Tanya was planting flowers along their front walkway when the sprinklers from Richard's yard suddenly turned on. The water sprayed far past his property line, soaking Tanya and her newly planted flowers. "Hey," she called out, standing up with her clothes dripping wet. Richard came outside. "Oh, is the water reaching your property? My sprinkler system must be broken again." His voice sounded friendly, but his eyes were cold. Later that week, Zoe was walking home from the bus stop when Richard drove past her very slowly. He rolled down his window. "You people should learn to stay in your own neighborhoods," he said in a low voice before driving away. Zoe told her parents what happened as soon as she got home. Marcus's face grew dark with anger. "That's it. I'm going to talk to him," Marcus said, heading for the door. Tanya grabbed his arm. "Wait. Let's think about this first. We don't want to make things worse. He's scaring our daughter Tanya. This isn't right." They decided to call the neighborhood association president, Mrs. Wilson, and tell her about the problems they were having. "I'm so sorry you're experiencing this," Mrs. Wilson said on the phone. "Unfortunately, you're not the first family to have trouble with Richard. The Martinez family before you left partly because of him." "What can we do?" Tanya asked. "Document everything. If he threatens you, call the police immediately. The association has warned him before, and we can't force him to move." That weekend, the Johnsons' next-door neighbors, the Paddles, invited several families over for a barbecue. The Johnsons were happy to go and meet more people from the neighborhood. During the party, while the children played and the adults chatted, Barbara pulled Tanya aside. "I should warn you about Richard," she said quietly. 10 years ago, he tried to prevent the Wongs from buying a house here. He said some terrible things about Asian families. The neighborhood association fined him, but it didn't change his attitude. Tanya sighed. "So it's not just us." "No, dear. It's not about you at all. It's about him and his small, hateful mind." When the Johnsons walked home from the barbecue, they saw Richard standing in his driveway watching them. He didn't say anything, but his stare made them walk faster. That night, Marcus installed a doorbell camera that could record video of their front yard and driveway. He also added motion sensor lights around the house. "I hope we're overreacting," he told Tanya as they got ready for bed. "Better safe than sorry," she replied. "I don't trust that man." Tyler appeared in their bedroom doorway, looking worried. "Dad, is the bad man going to hurt us?" Marcus went to his son and hugged him. "No, buddy. We're just being careful. This is our home, and no one is going to make us feel unsafe here." But as Marcus tucked Tyler back into bed, he couldn't help feeling uneasy. Richard's behavior was becoming more hostile each day. How far would he go to make them feel unwelcome? Marcus didn't know it yet, but he would have his answer very soon. Monday morning arrived with the sound of Tanya's alarm clock beeping at 6:00 a.m. She needed to get ready for school, and the children had to prepare for their classes too. Marcus had an important meeting at 9:00, so everyone was moving quickly through their morning routine. Marcus was the first to step outside to warm up the car while the others finished breakfast. The moment he opened the front door, he froze. The words he saw made his stomach tighten into a knot. Their family car, a blue Honda that they had bought just last year, was covered in ugly words. Someone had spray-painted terrible racial slurs across the doors and hood. The black paint dripped down the sides of the car, still wet in some places. "Tanya," Marcus called, his voice shaking. "Don't let the kids come out here." But it was too late. Zoe had followed her father outside and now stood staring at their ruined car. Her mouth opened in shock, and tears filled her eyes. "Why would someone do this?" she whispered. Tanya appeared behind them, gasping when she saw the car. She quickly turned to block Tyler's view, but he ducked under her arm. "Our car." Tyler cried out. "Someone broke our car." Marcus pulled out his phone with trembling hands and called the police. While they waited, Tanya took the children back inside. Through the window, Marcus could see Tyler crying while Zoe sat with her arms wrapped around herself, looking scared and angry at the same time. 2 police officers arrived 15 minutes later. Officer Jenkins, a tall woman with short brown hair, took pictures of the car while Officer Rodriguez talked to Marcus. "Do you have any idea who might have done this?" Officer Rodriguez asked. "Our neighbor, Richard Caldwell," Marcus answered without hesitation. "He's been hostile since the day we moved in." The officers took notes as Marcus explained all the previous incidents with Richard. When he finished, Officer Jenkins looked thoughtful. "You mentioned you installed a doorbell camera recently," she asked. "Yes, just this weekend," Marcus said, suddenly remembering. He quickly pulled out his phone and opened the camera app. All four of them watched the footage from the previous night. At exactly 2:17 a.m., the motion sensors detected movement. The video clearly showed Richard sneaking up to their driveway, looking around nervously, then pulling a can of spray paint from his jacket. For the next 8 minutes, he vandalized their car, occasionally stepping back to look at his work. "That's definitely him," Officer Rodriguez said, his face serious. "We have enough evidence here to arrest Mr. Caldwell for property damage and possibly hate crime charges." While the officers continued their investigation, neighbors began to notice the commotion. Barbara from across the street came over, covering her mouth in horror when she saw the car. "Oh my goodness," she said. "This is terrible. Who would do such a thing?" More neighbors gathered, offering support and expressing their shock. Inside the house, Tanya was trying to calm the children, but Tyler kept asking questions she couldn't easily answer. "Why does he hate us, Mom? We didn't do anything wrong." Zoe sat silently, but the hurt in her eyes broke Tanya's heart. "Some people fear what they don't understand," Tanya explained gently, "and fear sometimes turns into hate. But what Mr. Caldwell did was wrong, and he will face consequences for it." When the officers finished collecting evidence, they told Marcus they would go to Richard's house to arrest him. "We'll need statements from all of you," Officer Jenkins said, "but you can come to the station later today. Take care of your family first." As the police car pulled away, Marcus went back inside to find Tanya already on the phone. "Who are you calling?" he asked. "My cousin Charles," she replied, her expression changing from sadness to determination. "He needs to know about this right away." "Charles? Your cousin the lawyer?" Marcus asked. Tanya nodded. "Not just any lawyer. The civil rights lawyer who just won that big discrimination case against the city last month." For the first time that morning, Marcus felt a small sense of hope. Richard Caldwell had made a very big mistake, and he was about to find out exactly how big it was. Charles Washington answered Tanya's call on the second ring. "Tanya, it's early. Is everything okay?" His deep voice was concerned. "No, Charles, it's not," Tanya replied, her voice breaking. She explained what had happened to their car and how their neighbor had been harassing them since they moved in. Charles listened quietly, but Tanya could hear his breathing getting heavier as his anger grew. "I'll be there in 2 hours," he said firmly. "Don't wash the car. Don't touch anything. We need all the evidence." "The police already took pictures," Marcus said, now on the phone too. "Good, but I'll take my own as well," Charles replied. "I'm bringing my team with me." After hanging up, Tanya explained to the children who Charles was. "Your cousin is a famous lawyer?" Tyler asked, his eyes wide. "One of the best civil rights lawyers in the state," Tanya said with pride. "He's won cases against big companies and even the government when they treated people unfairly because of their race." For the first time that morning, Zoe smiled slightly. "So Mr. Caldwell is in big trouble." "Very big trouble," Marcus confirmed. The Johnsons all called in sick for the day. They couldn't focus on work or school after what had happened. While they waited for Charles to arrive, neighbors kept coming by to offer support. Mrs. Wilson brought coffee and donuts. The Pavels offered to drive the children to school for the rest of the week. Even people they hadn't met yet came to express their sympathy. Just before noon, a sleek black car pulled into their driveway. Charles Washington stepped out, looking every bit the successful lawyer in his perfectly tailored suit. At 6'4", he was an impressive figure. Behind him, 2 more people emerged from the car carrying briefcases and camera equipment. Charles hugged Tanya tightly, then shook hands with Marcus. "This is my assistant, Rebecca," he said, introducing a young woman with glasses. "And this is our investigator, Miguel." Charles knelt down to greet Zoe and Tyler. "I'm your cousin Charles. I'm very sorry about what happened to your car, but I promise you that the man who did this will face justice." While Miguel took detailed photographs of the car and Rebecca interviewed neighbors, Charles sat with the family in their living room. "We have several options," he explained. "The police will handle the criminal charges, property damage and likely hate crime enhancements. but we can also file a civil lawsuit for emotional distress, civil rights violations, and property damage. What's the difference? Marcus asked. Criminal charges can send him to jail, but a civil case can hit him where it really hurts, his wallet, Charles explained. Plus, a civil case creates a public record that follows him forever. Just then, they heard a commotion outside. Looking through the window, they saw police officers at Richard's house. Richard was arguing loudly, waving his arms. "They're arresting him," Tanya said. Charles watched with narrowed eyes. "Good. The criminal case is moving forward." The officers handcuffed Richard and placed him in the back of a police car. As they drove past the Johnsons' house, Richard's face showed shock when he spotted Charles Washington standing in their doorway. "Did you see his face?" Marcus asked. "He recognized you, Charles." Charles nodded. "My face was in the news last month after the Wilson case." "That's good. Let him worry about who he's up against." After the police car disappeared down the street, Charles turned to the family. "Here's what happens next," he said. "The prosecutor will charge him, and he'll probably be released on bail. Meanwhile, my team will prepare our civil case. I'm taking this pro bono, no charge. This isn't just about your family now. It's about making sure people like Richard Caldwell learn there are serious consequences for hate." Tanya squeezed her cousin's hand. "Thank you, Charles." "Don't thank me yet," he replied with determination in his eyes. "This is just the beginning." News of what happened to the Johnsons spread quickly through Oak Ridge. By that evening, a local TV reporter was standing outside their house, talking into a camera. "A family in this peaceful neighborhood woke up to find racist slurs painted on their car," the reporter said. "The alleged vandal, a neighbor, has been arrested and may face hate crime charges." Marcus and Tanya decided not to give interviews. Charles had advised them to let him handle the media. They were touched when they opened their front door the next morning and found a pile of cards, flowers, and small gifts left by neighbors and strangers who had heard their story. One card read, "This is not who we are as a community. We stand with you." That afternoon, Mrs. Wilson called a special meeting of the neighborhood association. Almost everyone attended, except Richard, who had been released on bail but was staying with his sister in another town. "What happened to the Johnson family is unacceptable," Mrs. Wilson said to the crowded room. "We need to show them that Richard Caldwell does not represent our neighborhood." People nodded in agreement. Then Barbara stood up. "I suggest we organize a fundraiser to help pay for repainting their car," she said. "And maybe we could all pitch in to get the children something special to show our support." The idea was met with enthusiastic approval. By the end of the meeting, they had formed committees and made plans for a neighborhood cookout to raise money. Meanwhile, at the elementary school, Tyler's teacher, Ms. Lopez, addressed his class. "One of our classmates experienced something very sad and unfair," she explained gently. "Someone damaged his family's car because they didn't like the color of their skin." The children looked confused. One little girl raised her hand. "But that's stupid," she said. "Why would anyone care about that?" "You're right," Ms. Lopez agreed. "It is stupid, and it's wrong. That's why I thought we could all make cards for Tyler to show him that we care about him." The children spent the afternoon creating colorful cards with messages of friendship. At the high school, the principal called Zoe to his office. "I heard what happened," he said kindly. "I want you to know that our school does not tolerate racism. If you need time off or want to talk to our counselor, just let me know." Zoe nodded, grateful for his support. "I'm okay," she said. "My cousin is a famous lawyer, and he's going to make sure the bad man is punished." The principal smiled. "That's good to hear. And remember, you have friends here who care about you." When Zoe returned to class, her friends surrounded her with hugs. 3 days after the incident, the Johnsons were surprised by a knock at their door. It was Mr. Chen, the owner of a local auto body shop. "I heard what happened," he said. "I want to offer to repair and repaint your car for free. It's my way of saying this community is better than what you experienced." Tanya's eyes filled with tears. "That's so generous," she said. "Not at all," Mr. Chen replied. "When I first came to this country, people helped me. Now I help others. That's how community works." The local hardware store donated new security cameras for the Johnsons' house. A computer company gave Tyler a new laptop to replace the one that had stopped working the month before. Zoe's favorite bookstore sent her a gift card with a note saying, "Books open minds and defeat ignorance." As Marcus hung the new security cameras, he looked around at their neighborhood. Children were playing, people were walking dogs, and life was going on. "You know," he said to Tanya, "for every Richard Caldwell in the world, there are 100 good people willing to stand up for what's right." Tanya nodded, watching as Tyler showed his new friend Kevin the cards his classmates had made. "This terrible thing has shown us who our real neighbors are," she said. "And I'm grateful for that." 2 weeks after the incident, Richard Caldwell sat nervously in the county courthouse. He wore a gray suit that looked too big for him, and his face was pale. Next to him was his lawyer, a young man named Peter Davis who kept checking his watch. On the other side of the courtroom, District Attorney Sarah Martinez organized her papers. Beside her sat Charles Washington, who was helping with the criminal case while also preparing the civil lawsuit. "All rise," the bailiff announced as Judge Wilson entered the courtroom. Today was Richard's arraignment, the formal reading of the charges against him. The judge looked at Richard sternly. "Mr. Caldwell, you are charged with criminal mischief, property damage, and commission of a hate crime. How do you plead?" Richard's lawyer spoke up. "My client pleads not guilty, Your Honor." Judge Wilson nodded and set a date for the preliminary hearing. As Richard turned to leave, his eyes met Charles Washington's determined gaze. Richard quickly looked away. Outside the courthouse, reporters surrounded Charles and the Johnson family. "Mr. Washington, what do you hope will happen in this case?" one reporter asked. "Justice," Charles replied simply. "The evidence is clear. Mr. Caldwell committed a crime based on racial hatred, and he must face the consequences." Another reporter pushed forward. "Is it true you're filing a separate civil lawsuit?" "Yes," Charles confirmed. "The criminal case addresses the harm done to society, but the civil case addresses the specific harm done to the Johnson family, the emotional distress and violation of their civil rights." Back at his office, Charles met with his legal team. The wall was covered with photos of the vandalized car, screenshots from the security camera, and a timeline of Richard's previous hostile actions. His lawyer called today, Rebecca, Charles's assistant, said, "They want to settle the civil case quickly and quietly." Charles shook his head. "They want to avoid a public trial, but that's exactly why we need one, to create a precedent that will help other families in similar situations." Meanwhile, Richard was facing problems beyond the courtroom. His employer, a large insurance company, had called him to a meeting with the HR department. "Our company has a zero-tolerance policy for discriminatory behavior," the HR director explained coldly. "Your actions violate our code of conduct." Richard protested, "But this has nothing to do with my job." "Your behavior reflects on our company," the director replied. "We're placing you on unpaid leave pending the outcome of your trial." Richard left the building carrying a box of personal items from his desk. His hands shook as he put the box in his car. Everything was falling apart. His neighbors wouldn't speak to him. His sister was asking him to find somewhere else to stay. And now his job was in jeopardy. That evening, Richard's lawyer called him. "We need to talk about the civil case," Peter said. "Charles Washington has a reputation for winning big settlements in discrimination cases. His last client received over $1 million. Richard felt sick. "But I don't have that kind of money." "Exactly why we should consider settling early," Peter explained. "If this goes to trial, it could bankrupt you." Richard paced around his sister's guest room. "What are my options?" "Not many," Peter admitted. "The video evidence is damaging, and Washington is bringing in witnesses who claim you've made racist comments in the past." Richard sat heavily on the bed. The reality of his situation was finally sinking in. One night of hatred might cost him everything: his reputation, his job, his savings, and possibly his freedom. Across town, Charles was tucking his own children into bed when his phone rang. It was Tanya. "How are you holding up?" he asked. "Better," she said. "The new paint job on the car looks great, and the kids are doing okay, better than I expected." "Good," Charles replied, "because tomorrow we show Richard Caldwell exactly what happens when hatred meets justice." As the trial date approached, Charles Washington's team worked tirelessly to build their case. Miguel, their investigator, had uncovered information about Richard Caldwell that shocked even Charles. We found complaints from 3 different neighborhoods where Richard lived before, Miguel explained, spreading folders across Charles's desk. In each place, he harassed families of color until they moved away. Charles picked up one of the folders. Have you contacted these families? Miguel nodded. 2 are willing to testify about what they experienced. Meanwhile, Rebecca had been searching Richard's social media accounts. She found dozens of racist posts and comments going back years. He was careful to use private groups, she said. We got access through a former member who was disgusted by the content. Charles smiled. Excellent work. With the video evidence and this history of discrimination, Richard Caldwell doesn't stand a chance. The day before the preliminary hearing for the criminal case, Richard met with his lawyer at a small coffee shop. Peter looked troubled as he pushed a document across the table. The prosecutor has offered a plea deal, he said. If you plead guilty to the property damage and criminal mischief charges, they'll reduce the hate crime enhancement. You'll serve community service, pay a fine, and be on probation for 2 years. Richard reached for the paper with shaking hands. And if I don't take it? Then we go to trial, Peter said grimly. With the evidence they have, you could face up to 5 years in prison. Richard stared at the document. What about the civil case? That's separate, Peter reminded him. But pleading guilty in the criminal case would make the civil case nearly impossible to win. That evening, Richard's sister confronted him in her kitchen. The neighbors are talking, she said angrily. My kids are being asked questions at school about their racist uncle. You need to fix this, Richard. How? He asked, his voice hollow. Take responsibility for what you did, she shouted. I've watched you do this for years. Blame others for your problems, especially if they look different from you. It has to stop. For the first time, Richard remained silent instead of arguing back. The next morning at the courthouse, the hallway was packed with reporters and supporters of the Johnson family. The Johnsons arrived with Charles, all dressed formally for the hearing. Inside the courtroom, everyone was surprised when Richard's lawyer requested to approach the bench. After a brief conversation with the judge and prosecutor, Peter returned to Richard's side. Your Honor, Peter announced, my client wishes to change his plea to guilty on all charges and accept the prosecutor's offer. A murmur ran through the courtroom. The Johnsons exchanged surprised glances. After the hearing, Charles met with the family in a private room. This is good news for the criminal case, he explained. Richard will be punished under the law, but we still have our civil case to consider. What happens now? Marcus asked. Richard's lawyer called me this morning, Charles said. They want to discuss settlement terms for the civil lawsuit. Later that day, Charles met with Peter in his office. Peter looked exhausted. My client is ready to settle, he said. He's facing financial ruin already. Charles leaned forward. Here are our terms: full financial compensation for damages, a public apology, and mandatory participation in a restorative justice program. Peter raised his eyebrows. A public apology? Yes, Charles said firmly. The Johnsons were publicly humiliated. The apology must be public too. And the restorative justice program? It's a 6-month course on racial sensitivity and anti-discrimination, Charles explained. It won't change Richard overnight, but it's a start. Peter sighed. I'll present these terms to my client, but I think he'll accept. He just wants this to be over. Charles stood up. It's not about what Richard wants anymore. It's about justice for the Johnsons, and making sure this never happens to another family. 6 months had passed since that terrible Monday morning when the Johnsons found their car vandalized. Today, the front yard was filled with tables, chairs, and colorful balloons as neighbors gathered for a celebration. I still can't believe how everything turned out, Barbara said to Tanya as they arranged plates of cookies on a long table. Tanya smiled. Neither can I. Something so ugly turned into something beautiful. The Johnsons had organized this neighborhood unity event to thank everyone who supported them. Their car had been repainted weeks ago, looking better than new thanks to Mr. Chen's excellent work. Richard had moved away, selling his house at a significant loss. Most importantly, the family had found healing. Marcus stood up and tapped his glass with a spoon to get everyone's attention. Thank you all for coming today, he said. A while ago, our family faced hatred right here in this neighborhood. But what we'll remember most isn't the hatred, It's how all of you stood with us." People applauded, and several nodded in agreement. "We want to share some news," Marcus continued. "With part of the settlement money, we've established the Oak Ridge Unity Scholarship. Each year, it will help a high school student who has shown commitment to fighting discrimination." More applause followed. Charles Washington, standing at the back of the crowd, smiled proudly at his cousin's family. The settlement had been substantial. Richard had agreed to all of Charles's terms: financial compensation, a public apology published in the local newspaper, and participation in the restorative justice program. His insurance company had also fired him after his guilty plea, and he now worked at a small office across town. The children had shown remarkable strength through the entire ordeal. Zoe had started an anti-racism club at her high school, with support from her principal. Already, 20 students had joined. "We meet every week to discuss how to make our school more inclusive," she explained to Mrs. Wilson. "Next month, we're organizing a cultural fair." Tyler, meanwhile, had gained confidence from the experience. Last week, he had given a presentation to his class about standing up against bullying. "My family went through something hard," he had told his classmates. "But we didn't face it alone. That's what I learned. When good people stand together, they're stronger than hate." His teacher had been so impressed that she asked him to give the same talk to other classes. As the celebration continued, Charles pulled Marcus and Tanya aside. "I just heard from the district attorney," he said. "Richard has completed the first half of his restorative justice program. His counselor says he's actually engaging with the material." Tanya raised her eyebrows. "Really? I didn't expect that." "People can change," Charles said. "It doesn't erase what he did, but it's something." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "I hope he's learning, not for his sake, but so he doesn't hurt anyone else." As evening approached, the neighbors helped clean up, and the children played a final game of tag in the yard. The Johnsons stood on their porch, watching the sunset. "You know what I'm most grateful for?" Tanya said softly. "What's that?" Marcus asked. "That our children saw not just the hatred, but also the response to it. They saw a community come together. They saw justice work, and they saw us refuse to be victims." Marcus put his arm around his wife's shoulders. "We're stronger now than we were before." From across the street, they could see their new neighbors moving in where Richard's house had once stood, a young couple with a baby, helping each other carry boxes inside. "Should we go welcome them?" Tanya asked. Marcus smiled. "Absolutely. That's what good neighbors do." Hand in hand, they walked across the street to introduce themselves, continuing the cycle of kindness that had helped their family heal and their community grow stronger together.